Welcome, everyone, to the monthly Brown Bag Lunch and Learn series, sponsored by Team Referral Network. It is great to have you all here with us today. I hope you've brought your lunch, if it's lunchtime for you, depending on what time zone you are joining us from. And we'll have the opportunity to kick back and learn a little bit about how to be more effective in your networking activities. Today, our topic is how to work the room. Maximize your networking efforts at your next networking event. And we are very excited to bring this information to you today. And truthfully, I'm really excited about our special guest that we have on today. Maybe some of you even know him. After getting up at the crack of dawn and walking through 10 feet of snow each winter to be the traffic reporter on CBS's WBBM in Chicago, Dave Linden moved west to the desert for stints on the radio. Later, he discovered through his public relations firm in Los Angeles that he had a niche for bringing organizations together to network and gain new business. How perfect is that for us? In 1999, Dave created The Largest Mixer, a yearly event with combined attendance of nearly 10,000 business people in the LA, Orange County, Inland Empire areas of California, and Las Vegas, Nevada. It's where he had professionals join him to exchange cards and information and network. Since then, Dave has sold his company, and he sold his event company and to continue his voiceover career, where he's been featured on countless commercials for prominent international brands. Such as, sorry, my screen faded, Dave, so hang on here, I'm going to get this out. Such as QVC, Eddie Bauer, Kellogg's, Pizza Hut, Lexus, and he's done infomercials for the giants Guthrie Ranker and Beachbody. We're all very excited to have you on the show here today. Welcome, Dave, to the Lunch and Learn, Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar series.
Thank you, Kelly. Very happy to be here, and that was a great introduction.
Oh, yeah, I stumbled over it a little bit, but just so you know, I was reading through off of my phone, everybody. Nobody's ever done that, right? But it is really great to have you here with us today, Dave. I know you bring a wealth of information and experience in how to work a room, okay, and maximizing your networking efforts. You know, we talk a little bit about the next events that people are attending, but I really hope they're going to take notes today on the information that we're going to be sharing. So let's go ahead and jump in. You ready?
Sure.
All right. So I love this. Get out there and work it, right? I mean, it is work, right, Dave?
No, I mean, absolutely. And that's the one thing that sometimes not only individuals who own their own business, but more importantly, if you're representing another company, oftentimes that's something where your boss doesn't really understand that it is work. I recall working at a, well, I don't want to be too specific, but I was,
right.
I was working at a museum in Los Angeles.
Okay.
There's a lot of museums in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And I remember I had just started and my previous position doing public relations, the director of that museum I was working for was all about me going out and networking and making sure that I was out there a few times a week at either a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner. And so I show up in Los Angeles at this new museum, and I remember saying to my boss, "Hey, I'm gonna go to this chamber mixer tonight." And he's like, "Oh, well, that's not really work. That's something you do on your own time." And I was like, what? That did not compute to me, like, I'm like, first of all, it is work. And second of all, I really do believe it's part of my work time. But there's just people out there, as you know, Kelly, that, either you get networking or you don't.
Right.
And I was certainly always a believer in the importance of making sure that, you're out there shaking hands. I mean, it's hard to say how many times a week or how many times a month, but I always say do it for at least the amount of time that, you want to put into it where it's still exciting. And then you never want to get to the point where it's like, oh gosh, it's another mixer. You always want to go where you're nice and refreshed and like, oh, I'm excited to be there. And when, you show up to team events where there's people that are just sincerely excited to be there, which is usually every team member, correct?
Right, exactly. We're always the excitable ones at those events. It's great, though. You bring up a really good point that sometimes people don't necessarily take this as serious work. On top of that, what I also find is sometimes people think that they can create these meaningful relationships that can build and grow their business by sitting behind a computer at their desk, doing social media or email marketing. And while social media and email marketing and sitting at your desk and doing those things can be extremely valuable in building your business, I don't think it takes the place of getting out there and building face-to-face relationships. And I think Team Referral Network and companies that you've worked with over the years prove that you really do need to get out there and make those contacts so that you can turn those contacts into relationships, and those relationships can help you grow your business.
Right. I mean, personally, I've never built any kind of relationship just through social media where that was the first time you met someone. It was through social media. And then somehow you have this blossoming long-term, business relationship. Usually it's the opposite, where, you might meet them at a networking event and then you connect on social media and continue the relationship there.
So interesting that you say that. We just did a webinar not too long ago that was based on taking your face-to-face offline relationships and solidifying them online. So that's a great thought process with that, and certainly was something that we put out in that particular webinar as well. So good thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly maybe it was more a few years ago where, social media might have been a little bit newer, but, oftentimes you just be standing next to someone and after a conversation like, hey, let me friend you on Facebook.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, interesting that you bring that up as well, because I don't want to take away from the fact that there have been many meaningful relationships built online. I mean, some companies are based on that whole thing, right? Building exactly. Marriages and relationships online. So let's talk a little bit about researching the right events. You're probably familiar with the concept, even though it may not be something that you use the exact same terminology as Team Referral Network, but we call in team power partners or power teams, something that's where you share the same type of client with that particular type of business. So, real estate agent and mortgage lender are going to share a home buyer or home buyer is who they would share. And so one of the things that I like to talk about in maximizing your networking efforts at events is to make sure that you're researching what the right events are for you, right? Because it could be different for different industries.
Well, true. And then also, if you're a true business networker and used to going to, mixer or luncheon type events where it's perfectly okay to, pass out your business cards and, not so much ask for business right then and there, but there's always that exchange where you're like, hey, what do you do? Well, I'm a printer. Well, what do you do? Well, I'm a dentist. Oh, okay, great. Let's do business together. There are, other events that actually that kind of thing is frowned upon. So you need to make sure that whatever hat you're wearing that night is the correct hat. You don't want to get kicked out of a networking event because you might have been kind of too selly, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, definitely makes sense. I remember one time I was at an event I was speaking at up in Salt Lake City a couple of years ago. And as I do when I'm out speaking at events is I'll go around and work the room, so to speak, introduce myself and meet the people that are there in attendance. And, my goal is usually to get a really good feel for the audience. And it happened where I was talking to one gentleman, and I asked him what his business was, and he shared with me very specifically, and I'm going to try to be delicate here because people might actually really be eating their lunch right now during this brown bag webinar, Lunch and Learn series. And that was that his company did testing on, we'll say, all different types of bodily fluids, okay? And they would test for a variety of things, whether it be allergies or testing for companies who have drug policies and, so different things like that. You get my drift, right?
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
And so it was interesting because I said to him, okay, so how are you looking to grow your business? Who are you looking to meet? Because, my goal is to be that connector for him, right? And I, am ready to start doing the sorting and sifting in my brain to see who I might be able to connect him with. And so he said, I'm actually looking for the owners of medical groups. When you have a HMO, you get assigned a medical group, and that kind of becomes your main hub for all your medical services. He's looking for those owners. And he went on to educate me a little further and say that those owners are usually a group of doctors that actually work in the medical group as well. So this, compilation of doctors collaborate on owning the medical group, and obviously they build that business together. So this is pretty fascinating to me. So I'm at a networking event that is filled with local business owners. There's the printer, there is the dentist, there's the personal trainer, there's the marketing person, the real estate agent, mortgage people, insurance people. Okay, kind of very typical small business general audience. And I know for a fact that there's not a doctor amongst them, and certainly not a doctor who owns a medical group, and probably not a bunch of people who deal with those people either. So right. I'm thinking this guy's at the wrong event. And I say to him, what led you to come to this event and invest your money and time to be here? And he said, I don't know. I read about it and just thought it sounded good. So I thought, that's how probably a lot of our people pick their events. And I want to tell you right now, you need to stop that. You need to really research where the right event is for you. So I went on, I asked that guy, I said, would it be okay if I gave you some suggestions about your next networking event? And he's like, yeah, definitely, please do so. I said, tell me, where do doctors hang out? I think doctors hang out at, they might network at their own societies events, so maybe they belong to the American Medical Association. What events is the American Medical Association putting on? I think charity golf tournaments that are put on by larger scale companies might bring in, doctors and owners of medical groups. So I brainstormed with him for a little bit to think where he might look and find either his direct potential client, customer, or the businesses that serve those people. And so he came up with a short list, and he was really happy. He's like, I hadn't even looked at this. I hadn't even thought of it. So I think the research that you can spend putting some time into that will get you to the right audience for your networking. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, on the flip side, sometimes you might throw yourself into a situation where it might not be the right event, but you never know. I mean, if you end up at the wrong event and realize, oh my gosh, I'm at the wrong event. Sometimes though, maybe there's someone there that might know somebody else that can help you achieve that same goal.
Definitely. I think never is it a waste of time, but I do find sometimes people don't do the right research into the event. They don't do the pre-planning, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. They go to an event, they don't meet or hit their target, and they walk out of there and say networking doesn't work, right?
Well,
but that's not really the case. Like, we know networking works, okay? So it can be definitely that point where you get to make plenty of contacts and then taking those contacts into relationships. So I definitely say research the right events.
Yeah, and I mean, and certainly thanks to that little thing called the internet, I mean, it's so easy to now find the correct events. It's not like, you have to sit there and make a million phone calls to different organizations. Just an easy Google search, you can find the correct event.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And thank God for that internet, right? So I think that goes along with our next slide here, which is you need to make a plan. You know, going into networking events without a plan is really potentially a waste of time. And you put on some large scale networking events in your past. You know, if people didn't plan to create a great space for their exhibitor table, right, at your events, if they didn't, you know, have some method of collecting the contact information for the people who stopped by their booth, okay, what would happen?
Nothing.
Right, a big fat nothing.
Right, right.
They would
And
have
I mean,
to take that money. They might as well have just, you know, stuck it in the bank. It would have been better for them.
right, exactly. And I mean, and this topic you're speaking of, that's a whole other webinar.
Right, exactly. But I think, you know, I think people need to understand that, you know, don't randomly select an event and then don't, you know, wing it as you're going into it and hope for the best. I think making a plan on who do you want to meet. You know, I like to condense it down and make it easy for people to think about who they want to meet. And for me, it's usually recommending that they go in, I call it the power of two. They want to go in and meet and make connections with two different types of power partners. And they need to name it. You know, if I'll go back to that real estate agent, if I'm the real estate agent and I'm looking for a great mortgage lender to connect with, and I'm looking for a great let's just say a great home inspector to connect with. Both important to my business, right? We share the same type of client. We potentially would be able to refer transactions to each other. And so, you know, I'm keeping it simple. I'm going to go in and say I'm looking to meet a home inspector and I'm looking to meet a mortgage lender, okay? Whatever that power of two might be for somebody, or maybe you have the ability to really think about in terms of a longer list. But I think you got to go in knowing exactly who you want to meet, how many contacts that you will be able to appropriately follow up with. So how many contacts would you like to meet, and really have a plan to do that? What do you think?
No, I mean, absolutely. And it's disheartening the amount of people that, you know, I've run through in my past that show up to, you know, either some kind of expo event or a mixer with absolutely positively no plan, and then they leave, they go back to their everyday life, and as you just said earlier, they realize, oh, well, networking doesn't work. And it's like, well, it was really your fault. Like, what did you put into it? And I mean, it's not like you got to sit there and do a whole business plan.
Right.
You know, it could really just even be something you're thinking about as you're, you know, driving to the event. But, you know, to further your point, I would oftentimes have my staff go to different networking events as well. And, you know, as the owner of the company, I would have to make sure that I would let them know what the goals were of that networking event, to make sure that, you know, that they had some kind of idea of what we wanted to get out of it. Now, I will tell you, Kelly, but for fear of getting yelled at, can you get yelled at on a webinar?
Maybe.
Maybe, okay. Well, one of the goals, and allow me to further explain after I say what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But one of the goals was always to make sure you don't come back to the office the next day without a minimum of 20 business cards.
Okay.
Now, that isn't about going and just business card collecting, because that is not networking, but it was at least a goal so that they would feel that, you know, try to meet at least 20 people. And of course, for me, proof that potentially they had met them was that they brought back a business card. But something on the lines of that, where it's like, you know, force yourself to say, hey, I'm going to meet, you know, X amount of people. Because it's very easy just to show up to, you know, let's just say an evening networking event, and you see this great buffet of food, and you end up just eating the whole night, and maybe gradually, you know, talking to a few people. We'll get to the whole food thing in a little bit.
Right.
Because I'm sure you're going to ask me, do I have any other thoughts? And I will throw that thought in there about food, but that's the tease for maybe 10 minutes from now. But anyways, certainly have an idea of like, I want to meet at least X amount of people. So at least you can, drive back home that evening and be like, hey, you know what? It was a success. I reached a goal, whatever that is.
You brought up something right from the very beginning that intrigued me, and I think I'm going to share with our audience here my thought on this, is that you as the boss, the owner of the company, as you were sending out your employees, you made it clear that they were to have a plan. It's a goal of making 20 contacts, coming back with cards. I'm sure you coached them on the right way to do that, and we will expand a little bit more on that too.
Yeah, Kelly, by the way, it was actually a mini manual. We
nice.
take it very seriously. There was 1 through 20 is exactly what you need to do in order to make sure that it was worth sending you to that event. So
and that's going to even further my cause here, because what I was saying is we should all treat this as if we were the boss instructing the employee what to do. We should instruct ourselves that way. See, as the boss or the owner, we maybe have a tendency to go out there and we're going to wing it because, we're the boss, we're the owner. And I just love that approach, that if mentally we took a step back before we sent ourselves out to go network, that we would take your manual, your 20 points, and tell them to ourselves exactly what we're looking to do here. I mean, that's a plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, let's just say one of the 20 things, just even so minimally, was to make sure that you took a photo of either yourself and, let's just say, the person that put on the event, or maybe the group of people that put on the event, so that the next day we could post on our social media, hey, this is where we were.
I love that. That is terrific. And this goes back to kind of edify that webinar that I was referring to that I'd done with Misty Cortez, and that was the fact that you wanted to, part of your follow-up plan, and we'll talk about follow-up here in a little while, but part of your follow-up plan is a shout out on social media. So your plan of getting your employees to work it, and prove it, and then also do the shout out for in the social media is just a great way to take our offline connections and further them along online as well. I love that.
And I love when people, I've heard this one before, oh, well, I only use my social media for, friends and family. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so you're telling me you don't have any kind of business, social media medium. Yeah, you don't use any of them for your business. Which, believe it or not, there are people that do not, and that's fine. But
not so many anymore. Mm-hmm.
True. But I'll tell you, what a great way not only to let the community know that, hey, I'm out there, for my customers, for myself, but also it's just a shout out. Hey, thank you to Team Referral Network for doing such a great job.
I love it. I just love it. That is great. All right. So let's move on here. Oh, by the way, is there any other tips from those 20 points that you might want to share with us?
Well, no, Kelly, but for the low price of $19.95, no, I was just kidding. It's not for sale.
All right. No
that
problem.
We'll
just take those tidbits and be thrilled.
Halfway through comedy there.
Yeah. What I loved is you put on your radio voice right there. I love that.
We had a tie, for the low price of $19.95, you too can own the manual.
Right.
But, okay, well, here is another one. When we would go out to networking events, oftentimes you would see, when you're leaving, maybe a restaurant that might have, have like newspapers or, restaurant guides or whatever it might be, on your way out. Since, we were in the business of, reaching so many different people in different communities, one of the tips was if you see any kind of publications, to bring them back to the office.
Yep.
Because oftentimes you can, learn about the community by just picking up a local freebie community newspaper that might be at the entrance in the lobby of, the restaurant or business that, the mixer is being held at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just love that. And by the way, I love when you put on your radio voice. And, as you all heard in the introduction, Dave does voiceovers, and he is featured on many infomercials and commercials. And I think you just got a little taste of that voice right there. I love it. I love it. All right, moving on to the next slide here. We are going to, cooperate with me, PowerPoint. We'll just click. Okay, technical difficulties for a moment here. There we go. I love this. Batman and Superman together, partnering up for success. I know there's a movie in there someplace, but partnering up for success is sometimes a little easier for people who might be a little more shy about getting out to networking events or a little bit more of an introvert. And I want to encourage those of you that feel that kind of shyness or might be introverted, that you can still get out there and network very effectively. I'm going to share a deep, dark secret with you all here. So for those of you that are listening, you can feel free to share it with others as well. Some of you might get a chuckle out of this, but I actually used to be very shy and get very nervous about going out and networking. And even to this day, even though I can do it very effectively, and it's just part of my work, it is not actually the favorite part of my work. Does that surprise you at all, Dave Linden?
Well, it does, because you are actually a very outgoing person. Although, since I've known you for such a long time, that is a little thing I did know about you.
So I think the idea of bringing a wingman or a wingwoman, can make it, one, easier to get out there and network, and two, make it a lot more fun to do. I did an earlier Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar on gang networking. And Dave, if you're not familiar with that, I'll just give a quick little idea about gang networking here. Stacey O'Byrne and I actually did that webinar here in this series. And it's really where you put your gang together and you come up with a strategy in order to decide who you want to meet, how you're going to meet them. You meet in the parking lot. There's very specific information. In fact, you can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TEAMReferralnetwork, all one word, and see our earlier webinars. And this gang networking talks about how you make a grand entrance into the room after the event has started. You're all scheduled to go out to different parts of the room. You have your list of who you want to meet, and when you meet them, you introduce them to certain people in your gang, and it's this great method. And then there's a method for following up, and it's really great. But I think, short of going to that extreme, just bringing a friend with you that wants to network as well can make it really an enjoyable experience. And you want to make sure you're not spending your whole time with your friend getting drunk in the corner. That's probably not appropriate. But you want to have them along to make it a little bit more comfortable and have somebody to introduce and engage in a conversation with. So I like partnering up.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't been to that networking group before, then that's even more important, because there's nothing worse than walking into a room where you literally don't know anybody. But some of the most successful networking events I've attended is because I brought somebody with me, and we were both able to network our own businesses. And sometimes I'd network their business and vice versa, depending on who you're talking to. And more importantly, I think, you make sure that you let the organizer of that networking event know that you brought someone, and they will probably love you forever. Because just think, if everybody brought one person, the room will have doubled.
Wow, I had not even thought about that. But of course, as the owner of an event company who did this for a living, I can see how meaningful that would be. And of course, we do events at Team Referral Network as well, and I just think that's magnificent. I think that's a great idea. And oftentimes you want to try to introduce yourself to the event organizer or the person putting on the event, not only to let them know you brought somebody, but maybe also to let them know who you'd like to meet, right? Because they probably know who's there.
Right. And number one on that little list that that I would give to the employee was the first thing you do when you get there is you try to find the organizer and just you say hello and you make sure that they know you were there.
Ah, great. I like it. Okay, excellent. So partnering up for success. Let's go on to when we're at events. Okay. We have our slide here that talks about being genuine. I think one of the easiest ways for me personally to go out and network and enjoy it and be good at it is when I can be really authentic and genuine. I love meeting people. I'm probably less comfortable talking about myself or even my company, but thoroughly comfortable and thoroughly enjoy getting to know other people and about their business and how did they end up doing that and how long have they been doing that and what's their favorite part of what they do and who are they looking to meet. That's easy for me because that's my genuine self. Okay? And I think being able to be genuine and help others and learn about others all at the same time can be very effective in terms of getting results from your networking.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the easiest ways to be genuine is to breathe.
Breathing's good.
Talking to somebody. One of my favorite things to ask someone, while you're doing that the little dance, who are you? What do you do? Is just, when you kind of run out of that, 30 seconds later, you just say, so, how was your day today? And oftentimes you will get the strangest looks because they're like, I'm not ready for that answer. I have no idea how I am today. Where you say, oh, what did you do today? If I just asking just a general question that's very simple, but has nothing to do with the fact why we're at this networking event, helps to be a little bit more genuine.
Sure, and I could see that because I think it would be something that might get me out of my funk of what I think I should be doing and answering that question if you ask that of me. So I really like that. I think that's a great idea. I do find that people love to talk about themselves at these types of events. And sometimes there are, what do we want to call them? Stacey O'Byrne calls them net molesters. I've heard net vomiters. I've heard a variety of derogatory terms about people who just come up to you and they immediately throw up their business all over you. They're shoving their card into your hand. They're selling you and pitching you hard. And instead of really looking to get to know you, find out a little bit more about you and see how you might be able to make a connection. But I bet you've never experienced that type of person at a networking event, right?
I didn't know they existed until you just mentioned this. This is some new information. I'm going to have to run out to my closest networking event to see if I can bump into one of these people.
We call them, you called them card spammers, I think earlier too.
Yeah,
right?
something of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah. I tell a lot of times at these types of events, you'll see the two different types of people: the card collector and the card dealer. The card dealer is like the card spammer. They're just randomly, indiscriminately, handing their business cards out to everybody who they can get to grab one. And I read an article one time that said the quickest way to get rid of your business cards besides dumping them into the trash was to indiscriminately hand them out at networking events because they ended up in the trash. And so I think that going back to the be genuine part of this is you don't want to be a card spammer or a card dealer. And conversely, you don't want to be a card collector unless you're being genuine about it. So you instructed your staff to go out there and come back with 20 cards, but I bet anything, you gave them the actual instruction of, you ask for a card once you've made that connection. You want to find out more about their business, and then you ask them permission. Could I get your card? Would it be okay if we continued this conversation and I followed up with you? The appropriate way.
I did preface that comment because I was very gingerly revealing that bit of information because I actually, I mean, I've heard you in the past talk about, you know, the card collector.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, other than, you know, keeping printers in business, which is nice. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think they make much money off of business cards, but, you know, certainly it is the quickest way to get it, you know, into the garbage by just, you know, collecting cards.
Mm-hmm.
Although, at least if you utilize it, you know, a lot of people, they take notes on the back of the business card.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What we talked about, if we're going to have a follow-up conversation, I can remember, you know, X, Y, Z, and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's an art. We'll say it like that.
Yes, it is true. That is true. You know, Stacey O'Byrne has shared some tips on networking with our audience previously, and she has a right pocket, left pocket method for the people that she meets at networking events. And because she carries her money in her right pocket, she actually carries a money clip with money and has it in her right pocket, whether it be a jacket or pants, right pocket. The people that she wants to follow up with, that she feels like she's made a connection with, that it's appropriate to take those next steps, she puts those cards in her right pocket next to her money clip and cash, because to her that's potential money opportunity. And then the rest of the folks end up in her left pocket, and you know what she does at the end of the evening or the end of the event and gets back to her office, that whole pile of left pockets goes into the round file. And so oh God, I hope if I didn't tell this in a way that Stacey gets busted and sees somebody put their card in her left, she puts their card in her left pocket. But that is how she sorts and sifts through her networking card acquisitions. So.
Yeah, and which I knew that there was a reason why Stacey and I are soulmates, is because I actually do the same thing. Although I might take it one step further. If I'm talking to someone and I want to make sure that they understand how important they might be to me, I will actually pull out the cash in my pocket and show them, you are going in the money pocket.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. And still the whole time being genuine, right?
Of course, because I only really keep dollar bills in that pocket.
Right. So this is actually one of my favorite activities too. This is just how I'm hardwired, okay? And that is introducing others. I'm a connector. I cannot physically meet somebody without going through the mental process. As soon as I know who they are and what they do, I must immediately go through the mental process of thinking, who can I introduce them to? What can I do to help them with their business? Who do they need to meet? And I love doing this at events and spur of the moment, because I may have just met the person that this person is wanting to meet at the event earlier in the evening or earlier in the day. And I get to go search around the room to try to find them and introduce them to this person, because I know that these two people should connect. So I love being a connector. It is one of my God-given gifts, and it's a natural act for me. And I find that the most fun thing that I can do at an event. I know you are a true, connector, that it's natural for you as well. So I bet what I'm going to hear from you is that you enjoy this part of networking at events as well.
Well, absolutely. And the one thing I enjoy most is when maybe a few days or even a few weeks, you actually get a thank you from the person. Thank you for introducing me to this other person, because we're actually doing business together. And unfortunately, that thank you doesn't often come. Now, I'm not saying, it's important to do it for self-serving reasons, that you're looking for the thank you, although maybe to further your comment, which is to make sure you do thank the person at some point in the future. Oftentimes I will hear, and I is not being facetious, years later, hey, I went to your event a couple of years ago and I met a really great piece of business. Oh, thank you for letting me know. That would have been really great information to know, maybe a couple of months later. But But saying thank you, I think, is important too.
Yeah, you're right. And it was interesting. I had just something similar happen to me. Let's see, where are we? What day of the week? It was last week. And I was at an event, and a business person who'd been part of TEAM many years ago said, as we were sitting at this event, and started literally pointing around the room of all the people that he knew. And he said, I just want you to know that it's because of TEAM that I am doing this work here, and I know all of these people here, and all of these people here have either done business or referred business to me. I mean, it was like a, just very spur of the moment, off the cuff, genuine thank you for that opportunity. And you're right, it makes you feel really good. And so I think, in the being genuine and the act of being a connector also means that we need to follow what we are going to tell people to do, and that is to follow up and say thank you. I love it.
Exactly.
Yep, I love it. Definitely. All right. And then honing your message. Okay. I have something that is kind of a words to live by type of thing that I try to follow myself. And when I'm messaging kind of who I am, or what Team Referral Network is about, I apply what's called the mini skirt rule. Are you familiar with the mini skirt rule?
I am not familiar.
Well, I'll share the mini skirt rule with you and our listeners as well. The mini skirt rule is that your message is short enough to create interest, but long enough to cover the important parts.
I love it.
So that's the mini skirt rule, in case anybody's wondering. Okay. So what that means is you want to make sure it's short, cute and short. Okay. Or it doesn't have to be cute. That's probably some of the men on here going, oh yeah, right, I'm going to make sure my messaging is cute. But short enough to create interest means that you're not going to be giving a laundry list about your business or who you are and what you do, when you're just trying to make kind of this instant connection at a networking event. But you do want it to be long enough to cover the important parts. And that means you want to have them understand what it is that you do. Now, you've probably had this happen to you, Dave. I know that I have many times, is that I ask somebody what they do, and they start listing off every single thing that they do. Okay. And after about 3 or 4 in the laundry list of everything that they do, I check out. And as I'm sure people have seen, when eyes glaze over, it means, they're not listening any longer. And so I teach people to cut their messages up into one-liners, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and 1 minute. Okay. And take different elements of their business and slice and dice it up into that one-liner, 10-second, 30-second, and 1 minute. That way, I think at any given moment, whatever's appropriate, maybe it's only appropriate for you to share 10 seconds about your business because the program is moving on, or you're getting ready to leave, or whatever it may be. When you have a little bit longer, maybe that 30-second messaging, and certainly when you have the opportunity to engage in more meaningful conversation, or you're actually standing up in front of the room and can give a full minute, you want to be prepared. So you really want to hone your message, but I like the application of the mini skirt rule on top of it.
Yeah, and I wish I could add anything more to that tip, but pretty much that's what it is. And it's amazing how many people wing that part.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you don't have, it's not even like you got to sit down for X amount of time. I mean, you could do it sitting in your car when you're sitting in traffic. Just even into a recorder. I mean, anything. There's a nice little app on your phone that you can take voice memos. Just start talking about your business to yourself, so you can, really sit down and pare it down into that, minute, 30 second, 20 second, 15 second, 10 second, whatever's appropriate.
It's interesting too, you bring that up, and I'm going to ask you a question professionally about your voice work. Okay. Do you do that? Do you record yourself when you're starting to deliver, if you're putting together a project that, say, is a commercial for one of your, clients, do you record yourself?
Right. So I would record myself. As opposed to,
or, you know, as opposed
would
to
you like
just
to re-ask the question? Yes, I
again,
would
or
record
looking
myself
in the
so I could
mirror.
record the commercial. Yes.
I know you record the commercial, but the practice, like, you know, you could look in the mirror and do it. You could, you know, just
Right.
be walking around the room, reciting it to yourself. But I was just thinking how cool it is that you might record that as well.
And, you know, if it wasn't that we've known each other for such a long time that, you know, I wouldn't be so, you know, in a familiar joking mood with you.
Let's, you know, it's one of the most awesome things about doing this Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar series, which, by the way, we do every month, the third Wednesday of every single month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, okay, is I get to bring my friends on for the webinar because I have this awesome set of friends who are experts in their field, and we get to share your expertise with our audience. So I love having you on. So that's.
But to answer your question, you know, my process actually is when I get the script, I actually will break it down and make notes on the script. Of course, I'll read it aloud to myself, but I would never go in cold and just wing it. Because the producer or whoever's, you know, listening on the other side is certainly going to know that you're winging it. And, you know, studio time is expensive, and you pretty much might have one or two takes, but if you're sitting there and, you know, it's could be 15, 20 takes in, that's costing somebody else money. So there's, you know, you wouldn't wing it.
And I don't think people should wing their networking messaging as well. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to have to speed us up just a little bit because I want to be timely here, and I know we're getting to a point where we are at the 45-minute mark. But our next slide talks about dressing the part, and I'm just going to say one thing about that, okay? You don't have to wear a suit and tie to look professional. I think you should look professional for your type of business. You know, in California, there is, we might take business casual to a whole new level. And that might mean flip-flops and cargo shorts and Hawaiian shirts for a lot of people. And what I want to say about this is that you should be comfortable in what you're wearing, but you should look professional for your profession.
Yeah, I mean, if you wear shorts to a networking event, I'm not going to want to do business with you.
Or refer you. I think that's even more important. Like, I would be worried even if I loved you, okay, but if I'm going to refer my best client to you, okay, and you're going to show up dressed inappropriate, okay, that's going to make me nervous, right? So I just think people need to look at the message they're sending. They don't have to spend a lot of money to look good, and they don't have to be in a suit and tie or a dress or heels to look good. There's a whole different way of being credible and professional and still dressing appropriately.
Well, especially because how do you know what that person's going to wear when they might, you know, meet them face to face in another meeting? But, you know, honestly, I don't even mind when someone wears a, you know, logo polo shirt.
Sure, right.
That's fine. But, you know, as a man, you know, if you're not wearing khakis or, you know, not nice jeans. I mean, you don't necessarily have to wear a three-piece suit, but, you know, typically people always ask what's the best thing to wear to a networking event. And I always say, you know, pretty much wear what you would normally wear to work.
Right.
But always wear comfortable shoes, even as a lady.
There you go. All right, here we come to the fortune, right? We all know the fortune is in the follow-up. I always say, in order to maximize your networking events or maximize your networking at events, and really, you know, once you've successfully worked that room, if you have not scheduled follow-up time in your calendar for the next day or certainly the day after that, you are blowing it. You are wasting your money. You're wasting your time. I really believe everybody should follow up with the people that they said they were going to follow up with. You know, don't forget the whole permission thing was, you know, can I get your business card or your contact information? I'd love to continue our conversation. Would that be okay with you? How about I give you a call tomorrow or the next day or whatever seems appropriate? I think sometimes people don't realize that that's what they need to do. And then on top of that, they need to approach this as if they were following up on a referral, right? Take that kind of mindset and act like these people that I just made the connection with are potentially going to become referral partners or give me referrals. I need to follow up and show them how I do this, what my stuff is.
Well, and I don't think there's anything wrong with even writing your follow-up, let's just say email, in advance before the networking event.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That way, you know, that next day, you're all ready to go. You can just tweak it a little bit, you know, maybe
customize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but have a little idea of what you're going to say before you, because everyone's excited before you go to an event. Usually it's after the event, you've already moved on to the next thing. And that's when I think people usually forget to follow up. But if you have something all ready to go, you're ahead of the game.
You know, and I'm going to say something that I find creeping. I hope you don't do this. And I'm sure you don't, but I find it creepy when I get an email like at 2 o'clock in the morning from the person I met at 7 o'clock that night. Okay. Like they literally went home, loaded all of their stuff into their CRM, and then they started sending out their emails. So I will say there is a fine line between great follow-up and appearing like you don't sleep. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would never send out a business email outside of the hours of 8 and 6 if it's to someone that you don't normally do business with.
And even if you are up at that hour doing it, you can actually set your timer to, you know, your timing email to send it out at an appropriate time. So that might be the message there. On our screen here, though, I love the show your talent and interest rather than tell. Okay. Follow and engage with companies on social media. I love that. Go in there, give them a shout out, especially if you took a picture with them. How fun is that? Make sure you practice quality follow-up over quantity. Okay, so, you know, coming back with that 20 cards is great. Coming back with 100 and having to do this, I'm pretty sure you might be losing a little quality at that point. And you are right, email is fine medium for reaching out, and having it pre-set up where you just tweak it and customize it a little bit for that person, and that follow-up is great. I'm a big believer in email follow-up and utilizing automated systems when you can. Having a great CRM can certainly be your business partner in life, and so I think that's great. I think that's great. Any final thoughts on this here, Dave?
Yeah, to actually do the follow-up. It's very simple. You follow up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, if you can't get it done the next day, I mean, I think any time within that week, you know, is acceptable.
Yeah.
So don't necessarily rush it. And I mean, you actually brought up a sad point where you might get an email from someone that night, you know, at 10 o'clock at night. Hey, it was nice to meet you this evening at, you know, XYZ networking event. And I do think that's a little, it is a little creepy, as you call it.
Well, I have certainly enjoyed doing this particular webinar series with you here, Dave. I want to give you the chance, one, if you have any final thoughts on our webinar topic today, but also, you know, tell our audience a little bit about what you do, and take a few seconds to share kind of projects that you're on and what you're looking for and who you're looking to connect with.
Oh, thank you, and I appreciate that. Because I knew you were going to ask me, do you have any final thoughts? I was gonna leave my last tip, which, you know, somewhat makes sense, but unfortunately people don't always follow it. But let me know what you think of this one.
Okay.
Especially, I'm talking like a lunch or a breakfast, but, you know, the evening networking events where, you know, there's the nice, you know, spread of food. Really eat before you go, and don't eat at a networking event. Because I find that when people are so fixated on the food, first of all, it could very well end up leaving a little piece of green something in your teeth.
Right.
Seriously.
I'm sure. Yes, I've seen it.
You know, end up getting bad breath. And no one wants to network with someone with bad breath, correct? And I think it just really just gets in the way, you know, when you have that plate of food because you haven't eaten all day, and you're finally excited to get there. I mean, you maybe have wasted 15, 20 minutes of perfectly good networking time. I mean, you only have a couple of hours at these events anyways. Why not make the most of it and not worry so much about eating the food? And typically at evening networking events, the food really isn't that great.
Right. I agree.
They're not putting out the filet mignon.
Yeah. Great tip. I love it. I love it. I love it. And share anything, please, about the voice business, what you got going, who you're looking to be connected with?
Sure. Well, basically I do all different types of voiceover work, from commercials to even corporate videos. So if you're looking to maybe add a voice to a web video that you're working on, or even a corporate video that you pass along to prospective clients, I'd love to be included on the project. My website is davelinden.com. DAVELINDEN.com. That's it.
Perfect. I like it. I really like it. Whoop, there we go. Well, I know how good you are at your business, and so I highly endorse you, and I love your voice, even when it's just your regular voice in our webinar here, let alone that perfect radio voice that you have. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today on our Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar series. If you would like to know more information about Team Referral Network, events we have going on, how to visit a local chapter, how to be part of our online community, you can get all that information at TEAMReferralnetwork.com. It has been wonderful. I am going to stop the recording here, but continue on with some announcements.